So welcome to the McLeod County Historical Museum. I am Lori Pickel-Stengel and I'm the Executive Director, and we welcome you to the Les Kouba Wildlife Art Gallery here at the museum. We have a lot of different collections of artwork here at the museum, but one of the biggest by far is the artwork of Les C. Kouba. Now, Mr. Kouba is known as Minnesota's Dean of Wildlife Art, and if you come and take a look around, it is a plethora of collections, and we don't even have near everything that he actually created. Now, we're very lucky here in Hutchinson because this is his hometown. He was born February 3rd, 1917 on a little farm just a few miles outside of Hutchinson. And he was born to immigrants from Czechoslovakia. And he was basically farming stock, but very early on, at the age of 8 years old, Kouba figured out something about himself. He could draw. And farming, he knew, was not going to be for him. And this all became solidified for him at the age of 11, which most people can't say they've figured out their career at 11 years old. But Kouba did, because he sold his very first painting to a local farmer who apparently was very well-to-do and loved the piece that he had created so much that he gave him, and in Kouba's words, more money than his dad would make in a week of farming. So he thought, this is the way to go. I have something here. So of course, as you know, he did not become the finished artist like some of the prints that he's most well known for today, what you would call fine art. He started out as a true working artist. He used to say he was 52% businessman and 48% artist. So 52% of that was just working hard and going out there and getting business, and that is really how he started his career. And one of those parts of his career was painting Coca-Cola signs. He actually left home at the age of 16, packed his suitcase, which had a little bit of clothes, he said, but mostly art supplies. And he set out, you know, to find his fortune, to see the world. And he really did see the U.S. because he visited during this time over 39 states, all the way to Washington, and he was down south a lot as well. And probably one of the most important parts of his life when it came to working and doing sign work and bulletins for Coca-Cola is when he was down in Georgia, and he got an idea for doing the sign a little differently this time. And he did not create the Coca-Cola words, the sign that we see today, but what he likes to say is he perfected it. And he truly did. He convinced, although he didn't work directly with the Coca-Cola company down in Atlanta, he contracted around the U.S. with all these bottling companies. And down in Georgia, he said to this one particular bottling company owner, you know, I think I could do this a little better. And the Georgian owner didn't really say yes, but he didn't say no. And that was a yes for Kouba. And he went ahead and he slanted those letters just a little bit more. You can see we have this lovely example here. This was a fundraiser. Yes, it's upside down, and yes, it's backwards, and that was the point. He could do it, and he did it very quickly, and he would do it in front of a crowd. But he thinned down the letters. He thought they were a little too bulky and big, and this was impressive to this Georgia owner, so much so that he called the company. And I'm not sure if Kouba knew if they were going to be happy or they were going to be upset that he was messing with their trademark. But they came down, they professionally photographed the sign that he had done, and then they left. They came back, and this time they came back with a big check. And he never discloses how much, but he did sign away the rights to his improvements, his perfection on the Coca-Cola sign, logo, excuse me. And so that was really where he knew he had a big opportunity in maybe designing logos and getting into making a good deal of money in professional commercial art. Now, he did a lot of different things. He, everything from Field of Stream to on Schmidt cans, doing wildlife work. He designed the Old Dutch logo and won quite a few awards for different commercial art that he did. But his true love was doing paintings just like this that featured wildlife. And this one in particular was really special to Kouba because it was personal. And it's very much full of detail, and you can see a lot of different people in the portrait, and he portrays himself at 3 different ages in his life. So there he is, you know, as a very young man, under 20 years old in the 1930s, traveling around the U.S. painting these signs. And there he is as a young boy. He's watching him with his bike there, and he talks about how he would travel around the country roads and go to the general store, and then as an old man in retirement, whittling away on a wooden decoy. So, like I said, this is a very personal picture to him, but it also speaks to a greater story of a time that's kind of gone by us now. And I have a quote here from Kouba on this particular piece. And it says, "I hope you enjoy the painting not only for its charm and its nostalgia, but also for its recorded history of America growing up in the countryside. I've tried to make the past real for those in this generation as well. We share a lament for what we as people have lost from these earlier times. But as long as the wild geese fly overhead, we can share their faith and hope for the future." Signed, Les C. Kouba, 1991. And that is really what this picture is all about to most people. It's a caption, or a snapshot, I should say, of time that no longer really exists, where the general store was the hub of the community. That's where you got your mail, because the post office a lot of times was there. It's where you purchased your supplies, maybe heard a little gossip, figure out what was going on in town without going into town. And it really is great to have that, not only for people who lived and experienced it like Kouba growing up, but for future generations. And that's why it's a wonderful thing to have here at the McLeod County Historical Museum. As you know, we have a lot of Kouba pieces here at the museum. We have everything from very early pieces when he was a young boy in school, and we have a statue as well, and it's the little crow statue, not the one that you probably see when you go down to the falls or to the park. There was an earlier version that was done in 1937. Now, Kouba has a story he tells. He was out traveling around creating these signs, and he was, you know, happy-go-lucky. He was catching a ride in a boxcar onto his next community, and he witnessed a man being stabbed to death right beside him. He decided, yeah, that's close enough for me. And living this, although fancy-free lifestyle was probably exciting for a young man, he came back to Hutchinson for the stability and the safety of living in a small town. And between 1936 and 1942, he did a lot of endeavors in the community. Pretty much he touched everything. We have giant murals that were done in local businesses. Some of them he did for his meals. It was the 30s. He was a working artist. But some others that were very well-paying jobs for him, like the Little Crow statue. The city decided they wanted to have the sunken garden and a park there, and they really felt to help commemorate the 1862 conflict, which had an early impact on the community, they would put up a statue of Chief Little Crow. And that first statue is actually here at the McLeod County Museum. So this is the Little Crow statue that was actually done in 1937 that I was talking about earlier. He is quite a brute. He is 550 pounds of concrete over chicken wire. And he's not as detailed, obviously, as the second Little Crow statue that is a bronze piece that was done in 1980 that is currently down at the falls in the park. But I have to say, if you are working with those materials, concrete over chicken wire, I'm surprised he got the detail that he did. So it just speaks to what kind of artist Les Kouba really was. He was very good. He is dressed very differently than the second Little Crow statue, which he is depicted here in more white garb, so a tailored jacket with a belt. He's wearing pants, and but still has moccasins, still has the feather and the long hair, which would have been traditional Dakota styles. This is actually a picture of the statue when it was down at the falls in the park. But when they redid the piece, they had to find a new home for the old Little Crow, and so we were very lucky that he got to come here and is on permanent display at the museum. So we welcome you to come down and visit him sometime and do your own comparison to the current one. But Kouba did a lot of research so he could depict Little Crow the way he felt that, you know, would do him honor. And so it's really neat to see that piece. And like all of the pieces here at the McLeod County Museum, they are here held in trust for the public. And we welcome you to come down and visit us here at the museum. We have some Koubas. A lot of people ask, you know, can you purchase a Kouba? No, we do not sell Koubas, but we do give out some complimentary pieces with a donation. This particular one was done for us by Les, and it can be purchased for a few $100s, and is signed by him as well and numbered. We have another one too that's really special to the museum, which is called McLeod. And this depicts, of course, Martin McLeod, who our county is named after. He came very early to Minnesota in 1836, and this is basically Kouba's rendition of Martin McLeod as a young man first coming to what would be Minnesota, what would be McLeod County, and looking out onto the landscape. And it's a really neat piece, and this is yours with a $500 donation, which also comes with a lifetime membership to the museum. So great pieces. And of course, our highlighted feature piece by the Country Store, which is now going to be featured on the Ace Hardware building as a giant mural. And we thank David for all his hard work and study of this piece and really capturing a snapshot in time and a piece of history for Hutchinson and for Les Kouba. As I said, there is a huge amount of pieces here at the museum, and Les Kouba is known for his prints, for his fine art, his oil paintings, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. He was a very prolific, and he had his hands in a lot of things, especially early on when he was finding his style. And one of the things that people don't realize that we have here at the museum is that Les Kouba was an inventor. Yes. An inventor. And bottom line, he was a hard worker, and he was always trying something that could generate some money. And this particular piece actually was one of his inventions that panned out. Now, some of them, not so much. He had one piece that he helped with a group of guys invent. It was some kind of ratcheting system for hanging out clothes for clothes. Well, lo and behold, you know, dryers became really cheap then, and that didn't work. But this one was a success. It is called the Artograph. So when he was doing this early artwork for magazines, for newspapers, he would work with larger pieces, and he'd need to shrink them down to put them where he needed them in the space that they allotted. And the Artograph actually did that. This is an arm bar that actually moved up and down. You could put the artwork on it and make it any size and reproduce it that you wanted. Great for him as a working artist. But how can we make money on this and sell more of them? Well, he and his business partners ended up advertising and sending this out, and the government actually purchased the patent for this, and they used it for many years in map making. So in the 1940s, this was very integral for them, and in the 50s for map making, and so was one of Kouba's successful inventions. So this is another great piece here at the McLeod County Museum. I always like to tell tours when they go through, when we're talking about Les Kouba, if it didn't move, he painted it. And this one actually did a lot of moving around. It was an orchestra trunk, so it would have been hooked onto the back of a pickup truck, an early truck, and it would have held the instruments or some of the pieces for an orchestra or a band. There's a photo actually here that we can hopefully get a close-up of, showing the artist who actually hired Kouba to create this piece. And of course it's got the band's name on it, along with instruments. And so this is an example of some of the earlier pieces that Kouba would have done. He always talked about he took any job, big or small, doing just about anything if it involved artwork. And this is a good example from 1929. This particular photo was taken in 1933, and it was the Henry, if I'm saying this correctly, Kilma band, and he played actually with Wally Pickle. So got his start with him, and he had this particular band for about 17 years, from 1950 to 1967. But when he was getting started out, this was a piece that was a utilitarian piece that he wanted to jazz up with some of Les Kouba's lovely artwork. But just like this, there's many more things that I can show you here at the museum.